Good morning. Give me one sec. I want to put my sleeping bag on. I have our little heater going. It's plugged in, but the camper is not a four-season camper, and it is so chilly in here that my toes are like icicles. So let me put my. I'm gonna rock you for a second. Just one second here. Oh, maybe I won't. Okay. Oh, I have a 0-degree sleeping bag, and it is the coziest freaking thing ever because it just heats me up so fast. Get over here. Oh my God. Ugh. This is entertaining me. Okay. We're getting there. Ugh. All right. I'm just feeling really good today. Let me see. Oh, let me fix something here. I want to make sure I can see my little record button because last time I freaking sat here and talked to the camera for like 30 minutes and it wasn't recording the thing. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking about starting some type of like, I don't want to say like an online course, but like an online something or other, some program about just like self-growth but I hate these like self-growth terms because they just feel really overused. But like just the focus on the like tolerance for discomfort and tolerance for just, I think discomfort is probably the best way that can kind of encapsulate everything that I want to talk about. Because I find that people are always coming to me for advice with certain things that I wouldn't say overcome, but things that I've taught myself, things that I've developed, like my self-awareness, let's say, just as like an incredibly broad term. And I really want to do something like that, but I'm struggling to find something that feels authentic and presenting it in a way that's also authentic to me. Because I'm very much like, I think, in the middle with some stuff, especially in the spiritual community and how spirituality and new age spirituality can be shared. And at the same time, I think that we make it more complicated than it really needs to be, and myself included on a large part of this. And it's something too that, and this is why I kind of feel stuck in this decision, is that you can't really teach somebody this stuff because so much of the lessons that I learned and the things I taught myself, it came out of like personal, sorry, I just whacked my microphone, but it came out of like personal desire to be better. And it came out of like a, a need to take back control in my life. And it felt like a starting point. Oh gosh, this is like, it's almost like going on a hike. Like you have to get to the trailhead first. You have to know where you're going, or at least have an idea of like what you want the end goal to be. So if you want to have really pretty views, you're going to pick a hike that has really good views, and you're going to pick one that is probably going to be really challenging because you're going to like have to go uphill and like traverse the landscape. And I felt like that was a really good example. But you have to like, You really do. You get yourself to the trailhead, you traverse the landscape to hopefully get to this end goal to see this big, beautiful site. And you have to experience it. You have to like actually do it to really understand and really be able to relate like the internal transformation, if that makes sense. Like I can tell people all day long, and people do this all day long, where they're like, you got to stop being a people pleaser. And it's like, you don't, like, it's such a surface level comment. It doesn't really tackle any of the roots. It's like this outer this outer bloom, you need to change that, but that starts from within, right? Like a plant has to start with its, first of all, like what it is, like what is true to this plant, what is true to this and the environment that it grows in, and how do the roots naturally grow, and you know, what is falseness versus what is a rejection of self, is I think a really hard thing to kind of figure out until you've been kind of just slowly chipping away at it. And I found that for myself when I first started really trying to work on myself and not really understanding, like, for the first few years, is this intuition? Is this uh, divine guidance? Is it ego? Is it fear? Is there like some type of motivation internally that I'm not addressing? And you just, it's like Shrek. I feel like every lesson I've ever like focused on, it just evolves in layers like an onion. Like you're gonna tackle sometimes the hardest thing first, or the thing that's like most in your face first. And then once you do that, other little lessons come up, or other entanglements come up that maybe were with that one thing. And when you kind of start looking at it from that point, you just kind of understand that, especially when you've done a good portion of it. Like I feel like I've done a huge portion of just development and alchemizing and transformation within myself, that it's it's so hard to put words to it, to coach somebody through that or mentor somebody through that, because the internal landscape is so personal. It's so personal. So it always feels inauthentic to kind of then try to help somebody through something, because their internal landscape and um, the the things that are going on within themselves is not exactly going to match mine. And I don't like to kind of be like an end all be all, like this is what you have to do, because it's just not true. The way that I handle things and the way that I move through certain things is not going to be the same for somebody else. And while that also kind of sounds very surface level, it's just like our lessons and the things that we have are things that we personally need to work through in our life. So my personal lessons and my ancestry and my epigenetics and all of that is so much different than yours, right? And we may have some layover, there may be some similarities, but maybe what I'm supposed to take away from a lesson is not the same thing that you're supposed to take away from a lesson. So you see how it's kind of like, how do you even begin to teach somebody how you moved through something, knowing that it may not be helpful? And I think I just get stuck in that loop in my head of like, it's so personal, and anything that I say is going to feel so surface level to somebody, because if you haven't started that trail yet, I could tell you all day long, oh, there's a big rock on the left, and there's a fallen tree about a quarter mile around the first, I don't know, marker or whatever. But you're not really going to understand until you get there and then you see it. And then what I think is a big rock may be like a mediocre rock, right? Or vice versa. If I think it's a big rock and you're like, that's fucking like unpassable. What do you mean a big rock? How do you even begin to traverse over that rock? So it's just, there's so many nuances just in life that it's like, how I don't understand how people even create online courses, because I'm like, how do you cookie cutter something that's ever evolving and ever changing, if that makes sense? But anyway, I think that there's so much value in having mentorship, and at least for myself, like I can only ever speak for myself, but like having mentors early on for me was one of my lessons in learning to trust myself and not idolize other people and put people on pedestals, and learning that I can't seek the answers outside of myself and depend on those to be true, because I can only ever know what's true for myself, right? So if someone's telling me, Jordan, you're going to be the, I don't know, XYZ in 2 years or whatever it is, it's like I'll never really know that to be truth unless I know it to be true within myself first. It's always going to be like an outsider's opinion. It's always going to be um someone telling you what to do, and someone directing you and pulling you through this maze of life. But if you aren't, like, I feel like the chariot card is coming in my mind in tarot, like if you aren't the one holding the reins, then you're never really going to know if this path is right for you or not, because you're being led. Does that make sense? I feel like I just went off on a tangent. Now I don't really know the point of what I was saying. Mentors. Yes. Okay. So finding like what is true within yourself first. And again, my story and the way that I navigated that was I had to be like brutally shut down because I had like leaned so heavily on this person to give me all the answers and to show me the way and give me direction, because I've been so lost from self-abandonment my whole life that I didn't know who I was. I didn't really know what my interests were outside of like volleyball. Like I knew I liked volleyball and I knew I liked books. and and then when I found spirituality, it was like this whole big exciting door opened up of possibility, but I didn't know everything that there was to know. Like it really felt like kind of stepping through a portal and getting into this new world, and you're like, oh, I've only ever heard of Christianity and Catholicism and uh, being Jewish, and I never had really heard of people being spiritual. I knew like Greek gods, people talked about Greek gods and Hindu, and so like I knew there were other things out there, but it always felt like a history lesson from school. I didn't really feel drawn to explore anything until I did, if that makes sense. It was like this kind of like divine timing in a spiritual way to say that, of just like my soul knew that where I was at was not where I was supposed to be, and I was restless as fuck, and found this spiritual person through a friend who we bought crystals from, and that kind of opened the little rabbit hole to like sneakily, go down the rabbit hole. And um it's like, this is so hard to explain. Sometimes I feel like I'm so good with words, and other times it's like all of this emotion and examples are like floating in my head. I'm like, can I pull all of those thoughts into like one coherent thing? I think for me, what I'm trying to get at is sometimes you don't realize what you need until you're at a dead end and you have to turn around and you realize that was the wrong way. And when I first got that really hard lesson and got turned around, I didn't have enough self love and compassion for myself. Because again, this had all happened so early in my journey and so early in working on myself that I didn't understand really what had happened and why it had happened until I had spent the 4 or 5 years, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess I don't really know, mourning and grieving and processing and mourning and grieving and processing. And I did that over and over and over and over. And anytime, um, I guess let me dial back a bit. When I talk about like mourning and grieving and processing, a lot of that actually had to do with bawling my eyes out and hyperventilating and feeling shame and humiliation and embarrassment in my body so viscerally that I had to sit and basically breathe my way through it and really try to regulate my own nervous system, because it was I'll say this my whole life. I Up to this point, that was the most painful lesson that I ever learned. And when you were in a state like I was in, where I wasn't really sure of myself and my identity, and if the things that I identified with really resonated with me still or not. And it was just in that very vulnerable, tender, um, tender, like I said, tender like fire, but tender space of, it's like when a butterfly first comes out of the cocoon and it needs a minute to let the wings unfurl before it can actually fly. That's like a very vulnerable time for the caterpillar and for the new butterfly, because it can't go anywhere, right? It's literally stuck. It has to let the wings do its thing before it can fly. And that's really how I felt. It was just this really long process of dealing with the betrayal and the hurt and the grief and the despair. And then, because that was all like directed kind of externally, of like, why did this person do this? Um, is there something wrong with me? Did I do some, like, is that true? And then getting other people's opinions on like, did I really fuck up, or what, are they an asshole? You know, and just kind of like, is it a little bit of both? Which now I think it's a little bit of both, but still, it's a very, I think it's easy to say self-work journey and not talk about the pain and the absolute, like, aloneness that you feel, because you can tell people what you feel, but only you are feeling your chest break apart, right? Only you are feeling the electricity in your solar plexus from anxiety, or you're the one that's feeling the waves of humiliation or shame. And we kind of desensitize ourselves to that trauma, I think, and desensitize ourselves to the human experience. And all of those things are incredibly hard to move through. And not everyone has the capacity and or the history to process it in the same way. Like I would never assume that someone should process something as quickly as me or as slowly as me, because their attachment to something or their sense of self is going to be different than how mine was. And while I think mentors are great, I'm just now getting to appreciate them again because of my hurt from a previous mentor. And I took a long break from spirituality. Like, when this had happened, it was like within a year of, actually, it was less than a year. I would say 7 months. I was 7 months into really starting this journey and getting really excited and just kind of gun ho ahead. And then this happened, and it was just like, I almost felt like a fool or a tower moment of like, I'm running, 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 and I'm off the cliff. It was just like a complete plummet. And then that plummet was basically took me like, that long to climb back out of it and to realize um, who I was and to trust myself and to know that while some things are my fault, some things are other people's fault. And sometimes it's a mix of everything. And the way that I relate to that has, like, let's just stick to that mentor pain. The way that I related to that in the beginning to how I relate to it now is totally different. Where in the beginning I was like in the worst grief I've ever experienced. And I've lost family members, and this felt honestly like 10 times worse because it was such a vulnerable time for me and my um I don't know, like just my self-discovery and heart openingness, that it took a long time for me to forgive myself, to forgive this person, to see the lesson in it, then to appreciate the lesson, and then to go back and look at it from a soul contract or like a soul lesson point of view. And once I started to get to that point, I quit identifying with it as a negative thing, and I quit relating to it as a victim place, because it wasn't me being the victim. It was this actually really, really beautiful lesson, beautiful lesson. And I appreciate it so much now that I'm where I'm at on the other side of it, regardless of how long it took, because during that time, I wasn't just healing from this mentor wound, right? Like, I'm working on setting boundaries with codependency in my family. I'm working on um, anti-racism within myself and within my family. I'm working on my communication skills. I'm working on self-compassion and empathy and kindness and tolerance, and then working on that with people who are not myself and people who have views that I think are horrible, and trying to find ways to balance life and balance the nuances in life, which is hard to hold. It's hard to hold, especially I think now, which this is again just a personal opinion, but the way that we live as a society today is divisive. I mean, I don't need to say this. I think most of us can see that. If you're seeing this video, I think most of us know that. But it's unkind. There's no human decency anymore, and it just feels like, instead of a rat race, it feels like every day we're living a new day of Black Friday. That's kind of the best way I can describe it. Like, everyone is just constantly running. They don't care who they're knocking down, the people they're stepping on. They're just running towards the material thing that they want, and without being concerned about the people around them, their impact on the world, their intent versus impact. Because sometimes we can intend to do something nice, and the impact is like hurtful. And then there's no accountability. And that's so hard on social media because there's so many bot accounts. So it's like a high percentage of interactions that we have with accounts aren't even real people. And it just creates this crazy dynamic of trying to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, and then creating a well of tolerance within yourself for handling negativity, whether it's coming from a bot account or a real person, you're still seeing it and your nervous system's still going to react to it. So it's how do you hold things not personally while being authentic and creating that self-trust and self-resistance, or excuse me, like you depend on yourself, you know, to just trust that what you're doing is authentic to you. And again, I don't know where I was going with this. Oh yeah, social media mentors. Okay. This is a really long explanation. I'm so sorry. But what basically what I'm trying to get at is there's there's only so much that someone can teach another person. They just have to experience it themselves. They have to go through it themselves. You're never going to know what a thorn prick feels like truly unless you get pricked by a thorn, you know? And that's just life. We have to, if you want to be better in life and you want all of these things in life, you first have to like get to the point where you can experience it. And if that means trekking up a trail, or you know, if you want a really loving partner, are you being a really loving partner? Are you exemplifying all of the things that you want in return? And if not, do that. You know, and that's kind of the mentality I have with everything. It's I don't believe that life is all love and light. I think we see that in our day to day. And I do also put so much weight into finding people online that you can resonate with, and whether like your mentor knows they're mentoring for you or not, like you don't have to buy a mentorship. There's so many YouTube readers that I absolutely love, and they just give me the best confirmations of what I already know to be true within myself. But sometimes having that confirmation and having that other soul in alignment with you and communicating those things to you, or those affirmations to you, is what keeps the hope alive and keeps the spark alive to keep working on yourself. And I remember thinking about this a lot a few years ago, because part of me had felt like, do I always, like, am I not a good enough, am I not at a good enough place now, because I still use my tarot cards and I really enjoy using them. I think they're fun. And like other people would probably say that I should just trust myself enough by now. I shouldn't need a tool, an external tool to lead me. And I think that's really restricting. It was a very restricting thought. And at least for me, because I do get enjoyment out of it and it is fun for me. And it is, if it's not fun for you or for someone else, then yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think there's a time and a place on when you really need to check in with yourself and if something feels true for you or not. And just kind of looping that back in with the social media mentors, there's a lot of ways that you can support yourself, emotionally, mentally, with community, by partaking in social media. And at the same time, if you are not in a place, again, just from my own experience, if you're not in a place to really know yourself that well, and you're just looking for, just tell me I'm going to be rich, just tell me everything's going to be better, just tell me this, just tell me this, but your day to day isn't reflecting any personal growth. And by personal growth, I genuinely just mean your own self awareness and accountability and self trust. If you're in a place of, I guess, victim mentality, you're just going to gobble down everything that people give you, because you're like, oh my God, finally, some answers, some answers. Because that's with yourself and the way you make decisions and how decisions feel in your body, then you're just going to basically gobble down all of this outside information, thinking that it applies to you and thinking that it's for you and that you need to make all these life changes and you need to make all these adjustments to yourself. And as you kind of go along this journey, as you're trekking up that trail and through the landscape, you start developing that. And that was something that it took a long time for me to forgive myself with the whole mentorship thing, was because I kept comparing myself to the end goal of like, I'm just at this beginning trail. I should just be able to act like this end healed person now. And that's just not realistic, obviously. And developing that inner truth, which I think coincides with just a synonym for discernment, that, excuse me, that as you develop that along the journey, you inevitably get there. And I think the less comparison I did, if I could have done that more in the process, I would have built that self-trust and that self-reliance and discernment and all of those qualities a little bit faster. And at the same time, like I'm 35. I still have so much life left ahead of me. Like, what am I rushing for? What is the rush to get to that end point? And just to kind of loop everything back in, there's, I think, just such, and the Comfort Crisis, if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend reading it. It's amazing. I wanted to highlight like every freaking sentence. But there's so much around just our human experience and our just absolute aversion to discomfort. And I think it's because, as society, we have a lot of amenities and a lot of comfort in our day-to-day lives. A lot of people don't even like going camping because they are just like, why would I go put myself in an uncomfortable situation and be dirty and sweaty and have to do all this stuff, right? And for those that really are starting this journey or in the middle or in the trenches or almost to the finish line, or however you feel wherever you're at, don't create more pain for yourself. Don't internally, with your self-judgment, manifest hurtful feelings within yourself. And as because as you grow and as you get all these tools, you just keep collecting more tools. And collecting them is good. You need them, but then you have to implement them. You have to actually use them to make your life easier. And it's almost like you go to Home Depot and you buy this new tool. It's like, cool, I have it, but I have no idea how to use it in a practical sense. So then you have to learn like the time and place to use it. You have to learn the best way to to get your setup ready. I was going to say deliver the information, but then I wanted to stick with the tool analogy. But you like there's always going to be a process. It's never going to be Jordan woke up one day and she is her highest being and she's learned all of her life lessons, because if that was true, I would just be dead. And in my belief, I would just go back to my higher self. I would just reintegrate with my higher self and not be experiencing the human experience. And the fact that we're all here, I heard this quote once and I think it's brilliant, but it's, oh God. It's like the work isn't done until you're dead. I think that's what it is. Like, you're never done until you're dead. If you're here, you still have stuff to experience. You still have people to meet. You still have places to see. You still have situations to encounter, whether that's being the person who smiled at the other person at the grocery store who made their day, or being the person who picked up garbage in the middle of the road and that inspired another person to start going out and cleaning up because they had been thinking about it, or being an actual mentor, saying kind words to somebody, sticking up for someone who's um, experiencing racism or bullying, or being the person that tells your family to stop acting racist just because they feel cool. Like there's so much in life that we get to experience, and the more that we just dedicate ourselves to being true and authentic and kind, the more that we're going to actually start to see that change. And I'll kind of leave the message off like this of um, like one night I had some weed and was meditating, and I just had this really beautiful picture come to my mind about why it's important, in the grand scheme of things, for people to want to improve, to want to have that inner desire to just show up better, better and better, or to be more mindful and more kind. And basically what I was picturing was the whole of the United States, and I was seeing like those little those games when you were a kid where you would like put the little plastic things into the light box and you turned it on and then all the colors came up. It was kind of like that, but like in a wave. So there was all of these little points, and then there was like a big bright white light, and then as light does, there's like the point of light, and then there's like the radius around it, and all of the points of light around it would kind of glow and kind of glow, and then they'd get brighter, and then as those ones got brighter, obviously that radius expanded, and the ones around it kind of elevating and started to get more and more bright. And then when this one dimmed, it dimmed very shortly because everything around it was lit up so much that having all of that combined overlap of the radius light would light that one back up. And it was just like this visual of like, as we all do this and show up better and better and better and dedicate ourselves to ourselves, and in a way that is kind and compassionate and mindful, then it's like we just will naturally, everyone will just naturally be experiencing better and better and better because everyone around them is kind. And I think that also kind of ties into our need to be more prominent in our communities. And I say this to also hold myself accountable, because that's something that Josh and I have been talking about, is wanting to volunteer more, um, and just doing little stuff in our community. Because also we need to make friends. We've been here for 2 years and we really don't have any friends. Um, and but when you do that and you start actually building relationships with people in your community then starts to feel safer, because you have people who have seen you be kind. They will be kind to you. And if someone isn't kind to you, you know that you have people behind you that you're bringing with you to like anything. And it reminds me of this. Actually, that just reminded me of I think it was an Instagram reel or a TikTok I saw of this Black woman giving like a speech to kids and just talking about when you go into places and you go into interviews, and those people that are always like really confident and really assured of themselves, and they just have this air of like certainty about themselves and who they are. And it's because she's like, just bring everyone who has ever loved you with you everywhere, and walk through life like that, knowing that you are protected and that people love you and they care about you, they want the best for you. And I feel like an internal shift within myself, and it's kind of hard to hold on to, of like this self-assured, I almost like want to say like a self-assured prophecy, like it's going to work out, and you are moving in a way that says it's going to work out for me, so get out of my way. Like, excuse me, I'm navigating I'm going into that interview super confident. I know what I'm capable of. I know my value. I know how I'm going to be an asset. And it's just, even if you can't say like what you have, like if you can't list asset things, there's there's an energy about it, there's a confidence about it that you know you can figure it out. You know that when that situation comes up or if something difficult comes up, that you're going to make shit happen. You understand your own self resolve that X, Y, and Z is going to get taken care of because you're going to make sure it gets taken care of. And it's just a way that you move through life. And I just wanted to share that little piece because I, my dream is to just help people. Like, I want people to start and I want people to stay on this journey and I want people to show up in their day-to-day lives just better because I want that community for myself. And I just hope that, I don't know, I just hope that this is helpful and that it's guiding people in a way or giving people some amount of hope or motivation or just confirmation that things are going to be okay. Sometimes you just have to go through the lesson so you actually know and you can relate on a real level. And sometimes our biggest pain and our biggest lessons are simply, and I'm just going to apply this to myself. I think my biggest pains and my biggest lessons have all been so that I can relate to certain people in certain situations and environments and show people that you can behave differently and show people that, oh, I was a sexual abuse survivor and I'm happy and I've healed and I've moved on and I didn't do X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, I saw this girl get her ass chewed out by a random stranger online and she responded with kindness. Right? So it's like the more that we live out that truth and that and implement the tools that we learned, the more of an example you become for other people. And those are little seeds planted in those people. And those seeds can grow if they choose to, or they can be like so into their story and their identity and their narrative that they're like, I wouldn't do that. And then they move on with their day. Right. So it's it's that first group. It's that first group that I really want to focus on, even though I've fixated on the second group a lot in my life. That first group, I just there's so much positivity and change that you can create by trusting yourself, knowing yourself, going through the pain and feeling the pain, even though it's a shitty feeling. No one likes it. No one likes it. And at the same time, if we're talking about relating, if you have truly dealt with your shame and humiliation, let's say, and you've really sat and allowed it all to move through you and really just sat there and being and breathing through it, like, okay, I this is what it feels like to just really dive into that feeling. This is what it feels like to really feel it flooding through my whole body. It feels like waves of heat. Oh, it's really uncomfortable. It's making me really emotional. Oh, why am I getting so emotional? And then you kind of start picking it apart. And that's when the onion layers start happening, right? And then you kind of start realizing that you don't want to be the cause of that for someone else because you are so intimate with how it feels. And that's the change. That's the magic, that magic moment of I am so consciously going to choose not to react because I don't want that karma and I don't want to create that feeling in somebody else because whatever I send out is going to come back to me. So I'm going to choose to use my tool. And is that's everything. Like when you get to the point where you can consciously choose even though everything in you wants to like react back and bite that bitch's head off that said something mean to you on TikTok. Like, that's the moment. That is the opportunity. Like, when you get opportunities are coming, opportunities are coming. Not all of opportunities are just something landing in your lap. Sometimes the opportunity is to live by example and to show people I'm not who I once was. I'm not going to fall for your games. I'm not going to lower myself to engage in whatever this is. I see you. I see your pain. I see you. And then allow yourself to detach from allow yourself to detach. Okay, well, there's my class. This is my fucking lesson. Oh my god. All right. I've been talking so much my throat actually hurts. I have not talked that much in a really long time. Oh, we're still recording. Oh my god. If anyone sees this and you made it to the end, good for you. Good for you. One sec. All right. I'm well past the time I was supposed to be out, and my husband and I need to start clearing a basement. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk, my little rant. And I'll see you guys on the next Camper Chats. If you wouldn't mind liking the video, subscribing, leaving comments, any suggestions you have, or anything you'd like to talk about, like, let's talk about it. I'm curious. I'm curious what's on most people's minds today, because I only have mine. I only have my mind. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for supporting, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.